All right, people are concerned about the cost of food and groceries, and we're going to do that. We're going to talk to the expert, the president of the Arizona Farm Bureau, John Bolts, is joining us. John, thanks for doing this.
Glad to be here today with you, Mike.
Let's start with the tariff angle on this. People are concerned that tariffs would dramatically affect food prices. Would they? And if so, how would tariffs or how would they affect the industry?
There's certain products that it might impact more than others. The United States imports more food today than ever. In fact, we import more food than we export. That started about 2 years ago. So it is going to impact us some, but we still thankfully produce the majority of the food and fiber we need right here in the United States.
When it comes to the immigration enforcement that's happening right now, the border enforcement, is that going to affect your industry in Arizona?
Where we're at in Yuma, we have a legal workforce. About 15,000 folks cross the border daily. They either have a temporary or permanent status or are U.S. citizens that choose to live in Mexico. So we have that part. We have about 15,000 folks that travel in from California, about 10,000 folks that live here in the Yuma area and work in agriculture every day, and about 8,000 H-2A workers. That's the federal guest worker program. So 45,000 legal workers working in agriculture. And while we are short of workers, we don't expect border enforcement to impact us because we do have a legal workforce. I think the other thing worth mentioning is while the tariff situation may be challenging for farmers and ranchers, and how it impacts our business, how it impacts our consumers all across the U.S. and Canada and Mexico, the impact of lawlessness at the border is huge on Arizona and on our rural border communities, farmers and ranchers that farm and ranch right along the border, and human trafficking that happens along the border has devastating impacts on the people involved in that, the people receiving those drugs, and on the lawlessness that happens in our communities. It's just devastating. So, we realize it's challenging for agriculture, but we're fully supportive here in rural Arizona and across the southern border of this administration leveraging what they need to turn our borderlands in southern Arizona back into places of legal commerce. It's key for us living here.
Shifting gears to the price of eggs right now, it's a question I was asked, and I'm not sure I have the correct answer to. Why are we seeing egg prices go so high, but it's not affecting prices in chickens and the chicken we consume? The difference between the fryers and the laying hens, what's the difference?
Well, I'm not an expert on egg or chicken production, but I do know that the laying hen, the egg industry, has been very hard hit lately by bird flu. Also, prior to those impacts that have been hitting in the last several months, we also had efforts by the Humane Society of the United States to force egg producers and some propositions like the ones in California that drove agricultural producers, so egg producers, to have to completely change how they produce eggs. Those things have been driving up the cost dramatically. And even though some folks thought that wouldn't, that doubled the price of eggs. Before now, we've had an even more dramatic impact due to bird flu impacting the flocks.
I heard a great... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, just then the meat production's completely different animals, mostly grown in the central eastern part of the country, southeastern part of the country, lots of chickens raised for meat over there, and those folks raising those haven't been as heavily impacted by bird flu.
It also, someone with your organization said to me on the air, which I thought was brilliant, that you're the only industry that you pay retail for everything you use to produce your whatever you're selling, but you have to sell it at wholesale, where most of us do it just the opposite. We pay wholesale, we sell it retail. That's got to affect you dramatically.
That's right, Mike. And so the other component is we're price takers in the marketplace. When folks go to the grocery store, they don't realize that grocery stores have a lot of leverage. Large restaurant chains have a lot of leverage to be able to demand a certain price so they can pass it on to their consumers. Farmers and ranchers don't always have the option of passing along all the costs. So we're price takers in the marketplace.
Finally, how about some tips for Arizonans that if they're trying to stretch their dollar more, their food dollar, what are some tips you can give them and where can they find those tips?
On our AZFB, Arizona Farm Bureau website, we have a neat resource that you can link to called Fill Your Plate, or you can just search for Fill Your Plate on the web. And that's a great resource to be able to find locally produced food, farmers markets, that sort of thing. Arizona Farm Bureau represents large farms that produce 90% of the food that's consumed in the United States, but we also represent smaller farms that are producing for those niche markets in metropolitan areas and smaller communities. So you'll find locations from Wilcox to Agritopia in the Phoenix area, all the way on up to Mortimer Farms up in the Prescott Valley. So lots of options there. Check it out.
Well, John, I got to tell you, I think your industry is an underappreciated industry, and we count on you every single day for what you produce for us to consume. And I don't think you get enough attention for what you do at the Farm Bureau. I appreciate the time today, and we all appreciate the hard work that all of you and the farmers and ranchers do for us in providing our food.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, we'll be back here in just a moment.